Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Now, for those of you who were not alive then, that was President Reagan challenging then Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall and give up its occupation of East Germany. Its fall in 1989 led to the end of communism in Europe. Reagan's words back then not only symbolized a call for freedom, but also reflected his unwavering belief in liberty and hope, which resonated with people not just in America, but around the world. And as the 20th anniversary of his passing approaches, his legacy continues to influence politics even today. Check out this 2024 campaign ad featuring Reagan.
Please welcome President Ronald Reagan, who has a few questions for you.
But ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? If you don't think that this course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4, then I could suggest another choice that you have.
That's another one.
I was a lifeguard on a river.
There's no turning back.
And I learned how to read the currents. Not just the ones on the surface, but also the ones deep underneath the water. I am about to start the biggest war of this century, and I'm not going to fire a single shot. We're going to blow up 8 years of diplomacy. Well, if you think that got their undies in a wad, you just wait.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
What would you have me do?
I want you to fight.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wants to dwell.
Please welcome my longtime good friend, Dennis Quaid. It's good to see you.
You too, pal.
Yeah, we talked, a couple weeks ago here.
On the podcast.
Yeah. And you're playing Ronald Reagan. And I was telling him when we talked before, I always kind of look at these things as to whether or not, particularly when you know somebody that you've known for over 20 years, I go into it thinking, am I going to be watching Dennis play Ronald Reagan? And it isn't very long into that before you stop seeing your friend and start seeing the character, which is pretty amazing.
That's quite a compliment. Thanks.
Those were big shoes to fill.
No kidding.
You actually were kind of intimidated to take the role on, right?
Well, I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. It was like I got offered in 2018, and Reagan was my favorite president. I voted for him, and I went home and told my roommate in L.A. that I'd voted for him. And he said, "You were kicked out of the hippies." And so I had to turn in my card right there. And so I didn't want to do an impression of him. He's like Muhammad Ali. Everybody in the world knows what he looked like, sounded like. And I did think about it. And I was invited to the Reagan Ranch, the Western White House. Reagan bought that after he was governor, and went up 5 miles of the worst road in California to get to the top of the mountain there, and came out, and I realized that Reagan was a humble man.
Yeah, it's not a fancy place, right?
No, it's not. And I could really feel him there. And like the house that they have, it's 1,100 square feet, maybe. They had a king-size bed, but it was two single beds that were zip-tied together. Just really. Some friends had bought that place, and they left it exactly as it was. I mean, he and Nancy's clothes are in the closet. You expect them to come back like any second. And it was really something. And then we wound up shooting there as well. It was an amazing experience. It's now my favorite movie that I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the hardest thing about getting into that character?
There was a part of Reagan that people said was very private. This is the great communicator, that there was this place that you kind of couldn't reach in him. And I think it was his place where that he used to really have privacy in a crowd, and also the place that he prayed to God from and he meditated from. But there was little stuff like he had a crooked smile, and I think it was kind of like nerve damage from some injury. But all those little things, they kind of add up. He was in the movies, and in the studios, they teach you like how to walk. Back in those days, we'd teach you how to light a cigarette and all that stuff, so you could look really suave. And I think that Reagan studied John Wayne's walk a little bit.
You think?
Yeah.
Coming up, Dennis says Reagan and Trump have many similarities, and we'll talk about that next. But before we go, take a look at Ronald Reagan, the actor in the 1943 movie For God and Country.
Excuse me, Captain. I know Danny seems hopeless, but I still think he can be restored to useful service. I've been looking into his background. I don't know, but maybe I found a key to his better nature. Good luck. Thanks, sir.
Tomorrow on Dr. Phil Primetime, have you ever been so hurt, so blindsided by betrayal that you just could not stop thinking about making them pay? Revenge actually lights up your brain just like if you were taking cocaine. Dr. Kimball invited Kevin into his miracle court to move people from pain to peace.
It was harder than I thought it was going to be.
Will he choose to keep suffering or set himself free? That's tomorrow. No. I'm talking about telling them to just stop it. Stop it. Enough already. Case in point. Earlier this week, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had what I consider to be ignorance and insensitivity in comparing federal immigration agents, ICE, to the Gestapo. Does he even know what he's saying? Look, you can disagree vehemently with ICE policy without making incendiary accusations about fellow Americans. So what's the real story about the Gestapo, and why are the governor's words so repulsive and dangerous? Well, let's look at the headlines. Tim Walz calls ICE a modern-day Gestapo. Agency calls comparisons sickening. Walz ripped for sickening use of Nazi-era language describing Trump's immigration policy. Walz dials up Trump derangement syndrome to new apex of insanity. Another headline, delicate DHS flowers triggered after Tim Walz calls ICE Gestapo. Now here's the details. Walz is addressing law students at the University of Minnesota.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in
can't
unmarked
even
vans,
say it.
wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye. Just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared.
Now that's not just false, it's historically obscene. Now, why do I say that? Well, let's just talk about who were Gestapo. They were central to the Nazis' regime of mass murder, torture, and genocide. Does that equal ICE? And if you're sitting there saying, yeah, sure does. Well, really? Because what's genocide? Genocide is the intentional destruction of an ethnic group. Mass killing to eliminate an entire culture. You think that's what's happening? You think that's a good description of what's going on? Gestapo are state-sanctioned terrorists with absolute power, ruthlessly eliminating opposition to Nazis. They went after leftists, intellectuals, Jews, trade unions, political clergy, and homosexuals. They used all types of torture, sleep deprivation, rubber hoses and truncheons, leather straps, steel rods. They would torture, pull out their toenails with their bare hands. Beatings were an art form. And we all know, unless you're a Holocaust denier, that they sent Jews to their death.
The Geiringer family had been rounded up earlier by the Gestapo and deported to Auschwitz.
There was a coordinated deportation of Jews, not to prisons, but to concentration camps and killing sites. The Gestapo was a key instrument in the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews. They were declared a criminal organization at the Nuremberg trials, convicted of war crimes against humanity. To say ICE is a modern-day Gestapo, that's not just hyperbole. It's a type of anti-Semitism known as Holocaust trivialization or distortion. Holocaust comparisons diminish the magnitude of those atrocities.
All our hair was shaved and naked, and then they told us, now it's your turn to go in the shower. Of course, we didn't want to go, but we were pushed into it. But it was an actual shower.
Holocaust analogies often feed conspiracy theories that downplay or deny the Holocaust. Misusing terms like Gestapo desensitizes the public to real anti-Semitic violence and genocide. ICE versus Gestapo, there's no comparison. The Gestapo had no legal restraint. They had the power to detain and torture and execute without trial. ICE, on the other hand, enforces immigration law. You don't like it, change it. ICE doesn't engage in ethnic cleansing. They don't engage in genocide. And if you say they do, you're just lying to yourself. They operate under U.S. law with constitutional oversight. Gestapo's mission was to eliminate political opposition. ICE's mandate is immigration enforcement. The Gestapo was an instrument in exterminating 6 million people to create a master race.
What became known as the final solution to the Jewish question was a carefully planned and organized effort to maximize the killing and destroy every Jew the Nazis could find.
ICE is not rounding up political opponents and torturing people and sending them to gas chambers. Come on. They're enforcing immigration law, whether you like the law or not. If you don't, then change it. I'm a huge proponent of immigration. We need immigration. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security posted this on X. It is absolutely sickening to compare ICE law enforcement agents to the Gestapo. Attacks and demonization of ICE and our partners is wrong. ICE officers are now facing a 413% increase in assaults. Our message is clear. Do not come to this country illegally. If you do, we will arrest you, deport you, and you will never return. According to the data tracked through May 12th on NBC News, 48,846 people have been deported so far under the Trump administration. 30.8% with criminal convictions, 26.1% with pending criminal charges, 43.5% listed as other criminal violators, 10% fast track for deportation. Even if that pace holds, there will be under 1 million deportations, far less than past administrations. There were 12+ million under Clinton, 10+ million under Bush, 5+ million under Obama. So what's the real story? Well, the real story is you can debate immigration policy all day, but you cannot compare American law enforcement officers, many of them veterans, parents, and your neighbors, to Hitler's death squads. The rhetoric is just wrong, and it is dangerous, and it incites hatred and fear. ICE is not the Gestapo, and calling them that, that's not brave, that's not righteous, that's just wrong. And that's the real story. I'm going to keep telling the real story, whether people like it or whether they don't. You'll find this wherever podcast players are and on YouTube. I'll see you tomorrow.
Or the want of a hug or a pat on the back that will never come again. Every Gold Star family fights a battle long after the victory is won, and today we lift you up and we hold you high.
And this Memorial Day, Trump says, holds special significance as it marks 250 years since the first American patriots gave their lives for independence. He highlights an upcoming military parade and says it's God who arranged for it to happen during his current term.
I'm glad I missed that second term where it was, because I wouldn't be your president. Amazing the way things work out. God did that. I believe that too.
Before heading to the Arlington National Cemetery, President Trump wrote a flurry of posts on Truth Social, criticizing judges who are blocking his administration's agenda. He says he hopes that the Supreme Court and compassionate judges will protect this country from what he calls harmful decisions. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
From being wounded in combat to surviving an ambush thanks to the heroic sacrifice of a fellow American, retired Major General Arnold Panaro's story is one of duty, resilience, and gratitude. I sat down with him to hear why, for someone raised in a family devoted to service, there's no greater calling than serving one's country. General Arnold Panaro, thank you so much for joining us here today.
It's such a privilege to be with you.
Now, I want to ask you, as a Purple Heart recipient, what does Memorial Day mean to you?
Well, Memorial Day is a very special day to me, and frankly, it's a very special day for all of those that have served in uniform, but know people that have served. I grew up in a family. My father served in World War II, as did my mother, who worked for the U.S. Army. My wife's parents, her father and mother, both served in the U.S. Navy. All my uncles on my mother's side and my father's side and on her side served in the military. I have two sons that served in the military. I served in the military in the Vietnam War, and you know firsthand the sacrifices that people have made for our country so that we could enjoy the lifestyle and the freedoms that we have, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So on Memorial Day, we pause to basically pay respects and remember those that have served and those that are serving today. Our military today, many of them are on the front lines of freedom, forward deployed in harm's way. So we thank them as well.
You yourself have a very extensive background, 35 years in uniform, now consulting throughout the government, national security, and defense. Tell us a bit about your background, and was there something that you grew up with that gave you the values that you have today?
Well, I grew up in a family, as I mentioned. My father served in World War II. My mother, they were both in leadership. My mother was a school teacher. My father was a small businessman. He'd gone to the Citadel, served with Patton's Army in World War II. You grew up with those kind of the greatest generation, and the ethics and the integrity and the to do the right thing hopefully rubbed off on some of his kids. It certainly rubbed off on me. So, you know, it was that great example. And then, of course, having the opportunity to serve with Marines in combat. All the Marines that served with me in my platoon were all draftees. I went in the Marine Corps in the peak year of the draft in the Vietnam War, a very unpopular war here at home. You learn a lot from individuals that are willing to make those kind of sacrifices.
When you're going through high stakes situations, how do you handle pressure? What gives you strength in those moments?
Well, I've got to be thoughtful about that. Is when you are in the intensity of combat as a small unit commander in Vietnam, and let's be honest, at any moment your life could be at risk, but more importantly, you feel the pressure of making sure you keep your Marines safe. And even though you have missions that you have to carry out that are very dangerous, you want to do that in a way to basically keep your Marines as safe as possible. A lot of pressure, but then you learn from that, and you learn tactics, and you learn some leadership principles that help you deal.
Yeah.
And so even though I feel like in my own life, both when working on the Hill or working in industry, working now, you know, consulting and things like that, you get in a lot of pressure situations. But once you've been, as all our military, and I'm not saying I'm anything unique, all the many millions of people that have served in uniform, when you've been in harm's way, you learn how to deal with pressure. And so that's helped me a lot.
Can you share with us a moment or a story when, in your military career, you fulfilled one of your goals or values?
The main thing would be probably in Vietnam, when I was wounded in combat, January 4th, 1970, I was moving my platoon into a situation, that I knew was dangerous, and I told my superiors it was dangerous, and they didn't listen to me, so I spread our unit out, but we still got ambushed, and my corpsman was seriously wounded, and I was giving him first aid. Then I got hit by a sniper and was out in the middle, and sniper bullets were whacking all around me, and a young Marine Corporal, Roy Hammonds, came out of a totally safe position. Here was an individual that it was in a different platoon. I didn't know him. He would rotate back home in 2 weeks. So he'd been in Vietnam 12 and a half months. He had no business coming out to try to help me, yet he came out, saved my life, and unfortunately lost his life in doing that by taking sniper bullets that would have hit me that hit him. I pulled him to the shore and tried to save him, but I couldn't. And that never goes away from me. So every day that I get up, every breath that I take, I thank Corporal Roy Hammond, for doing what he did. And I've taken my grandkids down to the Vietnam Wall so they could, etch his name and tell them if it hadn't been for Corporal Hammond, you wouldn't be here.
What's your philosophy in service? Is there a North Star that guides you?
I think people need to give back. People need to serve. They need to do something greater than themselves for their government. That's certainly what's kept our country going for many years. God bless the people that are willing to come in government for any administration and serve in these very difficult jobs. The people in the military. Freedom is not free. People need to make sacrifices, and there's no higher good than serving one's country. And
as far as the American dream, how did your experiences lead you to believe in the American dream?
Well, I would say I'm an individual that grew up in a small town in Georgia, Macon, Georgia. My family were hardworking. We didn't have some wealth fund, and didn't have a billionaire, passing money down. You work for what you work for, and you earn your living, and you do the right thing. And so I would say, for somebody like me that got to start in a small town, to be able to serve in the United States Marine Corps, to be able to work in the United States Senate, to be able to work in industry at high executive levels, to be able to write 3 books, to be able to serve his country, continue to serve on boards and commissions, and hopefully try to make a difference in the policy world. I would say that's what the American dream is all about.
So what would you say to inspire others considering going into the areas of defense?
I would say that, my personal experience, and I think the personal experience of the crowd I run with that have served in uniform and served in government, there is no greater calling and no greater satisfaction than serving one's country. What's made this country great is people willing to sacrifice it at points in their career, and everybody needs to do that. And guess what? They'll be glad they did. When you get up in years towards the tail end of your career, like individuals like myself, I look back and I don't regret 1 second, that I served in government and served in uniform, and they'll have that satisfaction. They may not know it now, and I tell my own kids that, and tell my grandkids that, and people that are willing to listen. You'll be so glad that you did.
General Arnold Panaro, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us today.
Thank you. It's a privilege being here.
Coming up, from Harvard University's CCP ties to illegal immigrants stealing benefits, we'll hear from our next guest, Charles Marino, on how the current administration's working to prioritize national security. The annual Memorial Day Parade returning to the nation's capital. We'll hear from rock legend Gene Simmons about his personal connection to the holiday when we return.